I'm starting by using the main brush and the first red colour. I'm adding this colour in blocks to the parts of the cherry that are made up of this colour by referring to the reference photo. This shade will act as the body colour. The shadows and highlights will blend into this shade later on. I've coloured this whole section without lifting the pen off the iPad. I personally like using this method for this type of colouring, as I find that it requires less blending later on. I use the reference photo to see where each block of colour should go. It doesn't matter if the colour blocks are messy or overlap, as we will blend it all together later on. I'm repeating the same thing now on the other cherry. I'm using a lighter shade to colour in the parts that appear lighter and brighter than the previous shade. I'm using the same technique for this step. The variation of tones used really helps to create a more realistic, lifelike look to the illustration, as it won't appear flat. I'm using this darker shade to add the deeper colouring details of the cherry. This is going to help create a sense of depth and shine. I am now filling the gaps between the shadows and body shades. Overlapping some of the previous sections will help create new transition shades. I'm making sure that I leave the highlighted sections white to maintain that shiny look for when we blend in the next step. I'm just continuing the process of looking at the reference photo and filling in the remaining area of the cherries. I'm now just swapping between colors and filling in the remaining spots. I'm using the water blender brush to start the blending process. I'm using medium pressure and blending all of the colors into one another to create a seamless look. This doesn't have to be neat or perfect. I'm just aiming to have everything look seamless, without any harsh visible lines. I'm being careful around the white section. I don't want to blend too heavy and cover the whole section. In the areas that are still white, I'll just gently blend the outer colors softly towards the center of the white, making sure I don't cover it too heavily with the color surrounding it. If needed, sometimes I will blend from the center of the white in an outwards direction to diffuse the white color further onto the surrounding colors. I like to turn off the sketch layer every now and then to check how everything is looking. It can help me visualize what parts need more detailing. I've created a new layer and selected the main brush again with a dark shade. I'm just placing further shadow definition on top of the cherry. Using the wet blender brush, I am blending out those shadows, using a medium pressure with my pen. I normally like to keep my pen down while blending one section. I'll then lift it and start blending out again on the same area to diffuse it even further. I like to blend out the shadows in the direction of the shape of the illustration. I find that it gives more dimension. I have now merged those two drawing layers together, and I'm going to continue blending any harsh lines or areas that need more diffusing to give it a seamless look. I'm applying a really light pressure, while doing this to make sure I don't mix the sections of colour up too much. I've created a new layer and will begin to add white highlights to the cherries with the main brush and a white colour. This really helps to create a glossy and shiny look. Then using the wet blender brush and a light pressure, I am going to softly blend these out, making sure I use small and soft strokes to not overblend. For these small sections, I am only touching the iPad very softly so that I don't dissolve the lines completely. This is where I like to use the eraser tool and trigger off the sketch layer to clean up any areas of the perimeter. I try not to make this perfect, so that it maintains an organic look, but sometimes a little cleanup is needed. Moving back onto the bottom drawing layer, I am starting on the stems of the cherry with the main brush. I am placing the darker green shade on the part of the stem which contains the most shadows. I layer this green on top of one another by placing multiple strokes in overlapping spots to create further variance in the colour and an organic look. I'm using a lighter colour green shade on the remaining parts of the stem to balance the shadows. I'm now continuing this process with the remaining parts of the stem, swapping between colours to finish it off. I'm using the reference photo to see where the colours need to go on the stem and placing them accordingly. Now that the stem has all of its colour, I take the water blender brush and apply very light and small strokes to blend some parts together. I don't blend it completely and allow for some of the natural colour variation from the strokes to come through to create an organic finish. I merged all of the layers together and then created a new one on top of the drawing layer. I'm now adding the final lot of shading to the cherry to make sure shadows stand out. I'm also using white to add in any small highlights that need to be added into. Softly blend those shadows out, and then you're done.